welcome to Moose and Tea, and welcome to the final episode of our creature feature season. All season long we've been looking at the evolution of the creature feature from them and the birds all the way through to modern takes such as Piranha 3D and tonight's selection Crawl, as we've certainly looked at the various ways that nature has decided to revolt against mankind and generally tear us a new one. But tonight we wrap up the season with Crawl from 2019, another film by Alexandre, who we previously discussed his work when we looked at Piranha 3D. And now with Crawl, it's the turn of crocodiles to be the creature of terror. But I'm your host always, Elwood Jones, and joining me of course is my one and only co-host, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
And Kim, Crawl, I believe, is a favourite of yours.
Well, it's what I like.
Okay. First of all, it's kind of unusual the fact that it's Alexandre Aja not doing a remake of an existing property, as we saw with Mirrors and Hills of Eyes and Piranha 3D. Instead, actually giving us He gives us a new project, but one that you were telling me before we came on, that he said was also inspired by the birds. And it also drew inspiration for the likes of Alien and The Evil Dead, where he really wanted to shoot a film with like as minimal locations as possible, and certainly, I think to an extent, he certainly achieved that, as we will discuss as we obviously get into this film. But the film itself, it follows a University of Florida swimmer, Hailey, who gets a call that a Cat 5 hurricane is on its way to Florida, and basically they've not heard from their father, so she decides to go and check on him, only to find that he's not at his condo, but instead at the old family home. Unfortunately, too late, she finds out that the home has also been invaded by rather large alligators, which are determined to make the house their home, and have very little concern, it seems, for this incoming hurricane that is causing the local area to flood. And with the water levels rising, it's down to Hailey and her father to battle these alligators. Yeah, this is a film I'd only seen once previously, but I know that it's got a lot of fans out there, including Quentin Tarantino, who named it one of his films of the year for 2019. But what in particular was it about Crawl that made you actually want to sort of revisit it, Kim?
To be fair, I really do like creature features, and I have been really into wanting to explore something other than the, favorites of sharks.
It's true. There are a lot of shark movies now, aren't there?
Yeah, and Crawl is more of, while a lot of creature features kind of go either under the indie category or they come out through, B movies.
Yeah.
Crawl is one of the few that actually went through the mainstream, right? So you're able to, it's more accessible for one, and it had a lot more publicity to go with it. So obviously that was right away on my radar, and it's one of the few movies in the recent years that I actually bought, and haven't regretted my purchase. So.
That's something at least.
Yeah, I mean, revisiting it was still pretty nice, because I always want to see whether you revisit a creature feature and it still has that appeal that it did in the first one, because after the first time, basically you know what's gonna happen, you basically know how the threat is and that sort of thing, but I still had a lot of fun. Like, some of the scenes still really got me.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting setup for sure. I mean, normally when we have these sort of the creature feature setups, it's normally either the animal is invading the human sphere or we're stumbling into their territory. It's sort of one of the two. So with this one, it's sort of like you got the elements of a disaster movie there, because we obviously have this hurricane that's on the way that's going to basically wipe out the town. At the same time, we also have this added element of the fact there's like killer alligators everywhere that have come in through the storm drain and basically taken over the basement where her father was working on the house, only to discover these alligators all too late. And now Hailey also has discovered them as well. And it's kind of nice the fact that with these elements, I mean, it's constantly a changing situation. It could have been that, with them being stuck in the basement, but instead it's sort of like the situation is getting gradually worse as this storm closes in, so the water levels are rising, and it just constantly is forcing them to sort of climb up through this house, and every sort of area they get into sort of comes with its new problems, as these alligators are nothing if not persistent, to say the least.
And especially when they're in packs, like
it's true.
There's so many of them.
Because I mean, yeah,
He's not realizing that the basement might have too, but outside is not any better.
That is very true, and it's also kind of weird when we look at this film, because I mean, these aren't like genetically modified crocodiles as we saw in things like alligator. They're not been like hyped up on drugs like in wild beasts. They're not even like prehistoric. Well, I guess they are prehistoric because they're alligators, but they're not like the piranhas we saw in Piranha 3D. So these are just alligators just doing their thing. We just happen to. It just how happens that the situation has caused the two worlds to collide. And as well as all the, dealing with these killer alligators, there's a lot of family trauma on play here. As Hailey blames herself for her parents splitting up, she's become very disconnected from her father, who was heavily responsible for like her swim training, and now she's sort of struggling with her own ambitions as a swimmer. As she feels that she's sort of falling behind, that she's not going to be able to compete, and it's these sort of skills that are going to come in real handy over the course of this film, to say the least, especially as the flood waters start rising up. But I mean, what did you think of these sort of two characters, really? Because we can basically boil this film down to just these two characters, Hailey and her father, who's played by Barry Pepper. Yeah, Barry Pepper, who I couldn't place who Barry Pepper was, and I looked him up on Wikipedia, and he's the sniper in Saving Private Ryan, who I thought was Alex Winters, but obviously isn't. So I think Alex Winters has probably been able to get quite a few movies associated with him, which he wasn't in. He was just Barry Pepper. I mean, he's in The Green Mile as well.
I actually haven't watched, I watched Saving Private Ryan like eons ago, so long ago that I don't remember it anymore, and it's not a movie that war movies aren't exactly my thing, and I think a lot of Barry Pepper's movies are very related to like rather serious content, which I don't usually watch a lot of.
He's in Maze Runner Scorch Trials. You can watch that.
I haven't gotten the Scorch Trials yet. The farthest I've gotten is Maze Runner.
Yeah, I keep...
which is interesting because, like, I'm guessing this is how they got casted, because Kaya Scodelario and Barry Pepper, they were both in Maze Runner. Okay. So probably that's an interesting... That was something I noticed too, so it was an interesting connection, and it kind of made me think, remember that I forgot to finish watching it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've seen like the first Maze Runner, and then I always like forget what happened in that one, so I never moved on to the second one.
I mean, to be fair, like we're gonna get back on the crawl in the real quick, but like, I mean, Maze Runner for me, I really like the book collection.
Okay.
So I had a lot of fun with the books. So it's something that I thought the adaptation was done pretty well overall, and I think that overall everybody did a pretty decent job. But I just, it's just there's, I think at that phase there was so many YA novels that were being adapted, and they all turned into like trilogies and stuff, that it's easy to kind of lose track of what to watch and what's good and what's bad. I remember it in the same time there was like Divergent, and then there was Hunger Games, and then there was, all of these things just kind of like meshed together, and so it was crazy. Like that was like kind of a popular phase. Not to say, like no judgment on other stuff, but I mean, like, I watched the first film of a lot of these things, and I just always forget to watch the sequels, because I have a secret, like, it's not that secret if you follow me on my blog, but I kind of like have this thing against sequels and remakes. I just think it's so many. It's like overflowing
Yeah.
in the market that it's a bit, ridiculous. So I don't know if it has to do with that I subconsciously didn't watch it, or it's just it hasn't landed on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, for Crawl, it was these two characters are. I think that it's okay. I think that for me, they're decent enough characters because we don't dwell too much on their drama. It's kind of like separated enough that when they're dealing with it, they eventually do. It kind of does match with the scenario they're in and how they're resolving this, and while they're going through this, and in the end, I think it all comes into play because obviously, it's it's a convenient situation that you have a star swimmer that gets caught up in a flood, in a flooded basement, right?
Certainly comes in handy.
Yeah, so it's very interesting of having this type of situation, but at this it's all a very convenient situation that kind of happens only in horror movies.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, for such a minimal location, I mean, it certainly manages to make the most of the situation because we basically have the house location and we have the gas station across the street, which really only comes into play when a group of looters show up, and they're basically there just to add to the body count, really. And we have all these. It does such a good job of really sort of settling its scene with the opening moments of the film. I mean, we obviously get the idea through the phone call that she has with her sister Beth about the state of the relationship with her father. We also get to meet her sister's old boyfriend who works for the sheriff's department, so we get the small town connection there as well. And it also means that when he just randomly turns up later in the film, it's all like, oh, we know why he's there. So it sets up a lot of good stuff in the opening, really. And once the film introduces its alligators, it's really sort of knows where the focus is, which is just constantly on how Hailey's going to deal with these alligators, really. So, although I have to say, I was really happy once they got out of the crawl space.
Yeah.
It just felt a really boring location, so.
But I think that they did a really good job in the sense that you really feel like the location is very extensive. Even in the crawl space, before it's wet, you walk through it and there's all these little clues of things that would be useful for her in the process, like those cages to catch the rats.
Yeah.
And all those and all those little things that are hanging around. You kind of have a good look of where everything is and how big this space is on top of that. And that goes all the way till, as she's walking around the house in the beginning, trying to find where her father is. And you have a good idea of the layout of this house. And I think that that's a really good use of location in the sense that you know that it's kind of like foreshadowing that in the future, this movie will extend further than this crawl space. And it is fun. When we get out of the crawl space, it's a whole different adventure, right?
It just felt like the world sort of opens up more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the key thing was. It was sort of like when they're in the crawl space, it's sort of like they're very limited, the movement's very limited, and it's all very enclosed. But once you're out of the crawl space, it sort of opens up the world and it becomes much more of a sort of traditional creature feature, as the alligators can be anywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
And I like as well the fact that they said the sort of highlight all the limitations of the alligators. It's sort of while they're on land, you've got the advantage because they haven't got particularly good eyesight. But once underwater, then they have the ultimate advantage here, and it's sort of what can we do with this limited advantage that we do have initially, and it's sort of seeing how these odds are just continually stacked against them. But I think it's when you got a character like Hailey, who's a very sort of driven character, is no sort of damsel in distress, she gets the job done, which is always good to see as well. So
Yeah, I think that for me, I think her character is really well built, and it's hard for me to say because I think when I was when I was watching Maze Runner, let's go back to that, Kaya Scodelario, I had opinions. I was not a fan. Let's put it that way.
No.
I'm not a particularly big fan of her acting. I think up till I watched Crawl. I mean, it's a creature feature. You can argue that there's not really much acting other than, panic and stuff. But but I do really like the character that they built for her here. There's enough depth. Like I can kind of compare it a little to the Shallows when we had Blake Lively and her character, and it kind of has that similar type of character progression where her character kind of finds herself along the way, because you can see a lot of parallels to these characters too. They're kind of struggling with ambition. They're whether it's because of loss or not or whatever, and there's a lot of other things that are going on in there, but they never kind of forget that this film is a creature feature, and and I think that has a lot to do with the movie being paced the way that it is, that you never really kind of have time to dwell on these things for too long. And it all comes down to, I really like the fact that, it comes back to her original training from her father, who keeps trying to break into this this type of mindset to remind her that, she's the apex predator. And in the end, obviously, that comes handy because it gives her that confidence and that courage to really get out of the situation.
Yeah, and I think something else I really liked about the film is that normally when you have the tougher sort of female character, they have to have male characters be either inept or imbeciles, and they never do that. Everyone seems pretty normal here. I mean, you got the father there who's obviously, somehow he's able to transfer the same sort of motivating speeches that he used to help with her swimming, apparently also carry across into dealing with alligators as well. And it's just great seeing these two people who start at the very bottom. I mean, it's like in Piranha. I mean, obviously, how the idea of small towns being consumed by the outside forces, and here we sort of have the same thing again. We have another great analogy here as they start at rock bottom. The crawl space is them at the bottom, where they are mentally where they are in life, and by them working their way up, they're solving their problems, they're dealing with the issues that have sort of been holding them back, and it's sort of like you're getting up, and we obviously, with the end that flashlight, that's the salvation that they've been seeking. It's what they've been working towards, as they're both in a much better place. They're dealt with their issues through the situation they're forced to deal with. But I think it's weird when it comes to alligators. I mean, they are rather underused. I mean, we obviously had Lake Placid. There's the Blackwater movies as well, and there's obviously Rogue. Rogue, for my money, is probably one of the best uses of alligators, and I think certainly this film is also on the same part of it. I mean, obviously we could talk about Alligator as well, but I think that's a very sort of different movie than the one we have here. But yeah, I think it's unusual the way they're not actually used more. I mean, they're kind of like sharks, but with sort of less limitations, really.
Well, and they also have the advantage that alligators are, I guess they're a little bit more they can frequent your territory.
They're extremely territorial, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I mean, especially if you're in North America, right? Alligators are around. And it's, especially if you're talking about Florida and whatnot, then obviously alligators, it's their territory completely. So it's very odd. Maybe it's it lacks that type of I don't know, exoticism that sharks have.
Oh, yeah,
because you don't see sharks every day, right?
Yeah.
But sharks is one of those things that people talk about, and unless you live in Australia where apparently the waters are full of sharks, then maybe it's a different mentality. I don't know.
So you're saying that filmmakers would rather shoot at the beach than in the swamp?
Probably, maybe that could also be a factor.
So, yeah. I'm trying to remember what else is now with this one. With the gore sequences here, this film is actually surprisingly gory in places. We get to see limbs ripped off. We get to see people torn up. I have to say that there's a sequence where she's in a death row trying to grab a flower, which I thought was a bit ridiculous. But
I don't know. But I mean, like, I remember watching this movie the first time, and my husband likes to watch weird things, like educational things, not weird things. I don't like to read educational things, but he does.
Don't like to learn about the world.
Yeah, I don't have that interest.
Yeah, I have my opinions and I don't need them corrected.
Yeah, so because I don't know, it's not something, but he did make a point, I think, when we first watched it, that that there's a lot of like realism to how the alligators are attacking. Because they try to kind of like stun you, right? So that's why, you know, there's all those like flailing you back and forth and then twirling around so that you kind of lose your direction and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those things come into play, and then they're fairly like, I guess, you know, like movie magic added, but, you know, like fairly accurate to what alligators would do when they attack you, to kind of, you know, subdue their victims. Their prey, whatever you want to call it. And I think that that's pretty neat in that sense. Obviously, you know, like, probably Hailey and her swimming helped with this whole thing, so that's probably why she's able to do this, or, like you said, she's a very driven character. So maybe that's what it is, the need to survive helped her, you know.
It's just, I mean, with
keep her composed.
The whole thing with the way that alligators, like, consume their things, they sort of latch on, and then by doing the twisted motion, it's about tearing things apart. So the fact she's just been spun around is sort of like, just like, yeah, I don't think that's how it works. But
I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked into it more, but I think that's what he said, that they do spin you, like, they do spin you around because it makes you lose your sense of direction.
Yeah, the death row.
So I thought that part was pretty good. Like, I don't have an issue with these things because I feel like, you know, when you do a creature feature, you have to give them some type of advantage, especially like these ridiculous things have to happen to a certain extent, because if not, then your character would be dead in 3 seconds. So that there wouldn't be a movie to watch.
I have to say that this is also the most restrained I've seen Aja's work. Be it for like Hills of Ice, High Tension, or Switchblade Romance as it is in here in the UK, or even like Piranha 3D. This is really restrained. I mean, yeah, we see characters get chewed up, and one character loses a limb, but it's all really restrained in comparison to like when we looked at Piranha 3D, which was just a lot of people screaming for a good 30 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Crawl is a very different pacing to Piranha, thank goodness. And because obviously, you know, if you haven't listened to Piranha, then you should go back and listen, because it's one of the few movies that me and Elwood have fairly different views on it, I would say.
Yeah, Kim doesn't like fun.
I wouldn't say that.
No.
But I just didn't think it was fun.
Yeah,
that's all.
That's fine. As you said, as you pointed out, that if it comes to a big massacre thing, you'd rather see a big ass shark than a whole swarm of piranha. And I was like, fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, in terms of gore, I do think this one was decent in the sense that he kind of replaced the gore. There was still, like you said, you know, like torn limbs and all that stuff. But it was replaced by kind of like the violence of it. You know, like whenever you had an alligator attack, it was very violent. It was just like, you know, crazy biting, and then you would have like the whole like smacking you around and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
and I think that added a little bit more, because it was kind of giving them that predator, because obviously now you're in a flood, so there's a lot of rushing water. These alligators are just hidden under the surface, so you really don't know when they're going to attack. So it has more of the, I guess in that sense, I can actually connect it not for the purpose of how they wanted to connect to the birds, but I do like that type of like tension that it was trying to build,
Yeah.
because I think that sometimes I think that for most part it actually landed really well.
I was surprised as well the fact that these alligators, they are CGI. There was a few shots that I thought it was practical, but it is actually all done by CGI. A lot of it was involved Serbian cameramen in green suits, and to simulate the alligator's head, they put a pillar on the end of a stick to so that the actors knew how to react or where to react to when it came to like rising as attack. So, but that's movie magic for you.
Yeah, I mean, it would. I mean, this really shows how far CGI has gone. Because it really is not the days of Deep Blue Sea anymore.
It shows what happens when you bother to invest money properly in CGI. Because how many crappy like shark effects, and I mean, you look at the current state of like the Lake Placid and the Anaconda movies and their CGI, and it's like, oh, that's not pretty. It's that
is true.
That's why I can't watch like the hundreds and hundreds of shark movies that the Asylum put out, because it just means it's like more of that crappy CGI where it's like and
the deal with Asylum, from my limited experience of it, is really a lot of recycled scenes. Basically, if they're chasing after you, you're using that one scene over and over again. At least that's how they did. That's how they did the two-headed shark attack movie.
Right.
And it was just every single time, it was just that shark was the same scene. You could like overlap that scene, and it would have been the same thing. I promise you, it would have been the same. I can't guarantee it, but
I take your word for it. There's Troma have been reusing the same car flip for years. They flipped a car in Sergeant Kabuki NYPD, and they've been using it at least about 12 other movies. They've used that same car flip. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they're looping footage at all. So, yeah, I mean, Crawl, recommended by both of us. There is a sequel apparently in the works at the moment, as confirmed by Arja back in, last year. And even though it has a minor body count of only 5, I think certainly it more than makes up for it in the shocks and thrills and just pure tension. I think it really sort of manages to capture that vibe of Alien and sort of like the power of a one location film. It certainly nails what Arja set out to do with this one. So I would definitely recommend checking this one out, certainly.
Agree.
So that's it. We're done. Season over.
We're done. Not quite. We still have to talk about our best, worst, and hidden gems.
Of course. So, what would you like to start with, Kim?
You can choose. I don't really know. I have some stuff that's still a bit undecided, so I might see how you go,
okay.
and I'll see.
Right. Well, let's talk about the hidden gem of this season. What for yourself was the hidden gem? Because we've certainly...
That's the one I'm most undecided. So how about you share yours first?
Okay. Well, for myself, I would have to say, like, hands down, it has to be Wild Beasts. I think it's just a phenomenal creature movie from Italy, and the fact it's not just one animal, but a whole zoo of animals hopped up on PCP. And the fact it also has one of the most bonkers endings I think I've seen in quite a while, where it just sort of ends. But the ride is so much fun in it. You get to see elephants on the rampage. You get to see people attacked by a variety of big cats. And it just constantly manages to find new and inventive ways to become even more nutty or just top what you've seen already. So, Wild Beast for myself is the hidden gem of this collection.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I actually chose Wild Beast also. I had it actually at the same level as Arachnophobia.
All right.
Because I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? Not a lot of people talk about Arachnophobia. And I really think Arachnophobia was a really fun movie. Obviously, like Wild Beasts, I agree with you on everything that you said. But I do want to give some love to Arachnophobia. Because I feel like, there's not a lot of spider films. But at the same time, Arachnophobia has that kind of like small town charm, and then you have some really fun cameos like with John Goodman and stuff like that.
Yeah, true.
And it really, and the spider sequence is just crazy, you know, like the crazy amount of spiders and everything that they're doing. And especially, you know, after our first fair with spiders, and a spider creature feature, like this was a really big step up, which really kind of changed the game, I think.
Oh, definitely. I think with arachnophobia, it's very much a generation thing. As especially for the Xenials, because we sort of all came up with arachnophobia when it was sort of like this film that was sort of passed around by word of mouth. It had a lot of airplay on TV, and it sort of stuck with a lot of us. And I think it's sort of kind of been forgotten in the years which followed, which is a real shame, because as you said already, there's some great creature feature moments in there. It's a film that really sort of makes you skin crawl in all the best ways, and only makes you sort of question next time you see the spider on, like, you know, in your kitchen, or makes you want to check under the toilet. So yeah, I totally agree, and it creates that same sort of unease that The Bay did, which came very close to being my hidden gem pick of this season, because I think The Bay is another movie that not enough people have they sort of overlooked for whatever reason. And I think The Bay was really good, but I think it was just the nuttiness of Wild Beast that just pipped it out. It's sort of like,
yeah, you know, I have to agree, because The Bay was in consideration. I really wanted to give it some love, because obviously we don't usually, it's a unique type of creature feature, and at the same time it also is set like a mockumentary, so you have this whole different element which you're being used, you know, like found footage and all that. And I think it's a really unique way. Not a lot of creature features are done in this way, and it's kind of like a unique type of creature feature, because the creature itself is so rare that it was definitely in consideration for me, even if I thought that there were, like, I didn't like it as much as you did. I had a little bit of issues with pacing, but still I did consider it, but I just couldn't get past Wild Beast and Arachnophobia. They were really on the same level for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's move on to the worst.
Oh.
We'll save the best for last.
The worst. This is the easiest choice of the whole season. The worst film, despite having probably one of my favorite random film moments of in a while, Kingdom of the Spiders was the worst film that we saw this season for myself. The best moment of the season also came in Kingdom of the Spiders, where we got to see a spider fly a biplane, which I still keep digging out to show people. I think that's just a phenomenal scene. But no, Kingdom of the Spiders, I was really disappointed. I was really excited going into it. It had all the things in place, you know, invading spiders, that ridiculous face of death with the biplane, Shatner to an extent. It had what seemed like all the pieces of being like a really fun time, and it took too long to get going for myself. It spent a good like 40 minutes like dawdling on, when it should have been like really getting things going. But yeah, Kingdom of Spiders was my worst film of the season. And yourself, Kim?
I kind of want to agree with you.
Okay.
I kind of want to agree, because I did think about Kingdom of the Spiders solely on pacing, but when I look at my ratings of the films, Piranha 3D was lower.
Wow.
So I have to put it last. Now, wouldn't it be fun if I put the best as Crawl, right? Aja makes the best and worst, but it's not. So we're gonna stay away from that. But no, I thought Piranha 3D was really like, I think what it is Kingdom of the Spiders didn't have any issues with it other than the fact that it was forgettable. So do you consider something forgettable as bad, or something that was really like first time watch and it was just kind of like, you know, roll your eyes, what am I watching, you know, type of thing? I don't know. I think that both of them are kind of on the same level, because they're essentially different types of movies, with both Like, they kind of balance each other out. Where I thought Piranha 3D had a decent pacing.
Yeah.
But it was just so much. Like, I had things I really liked about it. Like, when they, all the crazy dads and all the, that crazy moment where, things just go crazy at the beach or whatever.
Oh, yeah, the Spring Break Massacre bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That whole bit was super fun to watch. But then everything else felt so... it was kind of like just overusing sex and all that stuff. And
what a horrible thought.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not something I look for.
No, but as I said, you're not the audience appealing to with such good shirting.
Exactly. Of course. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing, for sure, this is a fantastic movie. But we're coming off from my angle right now. We're not talking about the general. But that's the thing is, that's what my argument is that for worse, it wasn't so clear cut because while based on rating solely, I thought Piranha 3D was just not good for me. Yeah. It obviously is out of my own thing. Like we've already talked about it in the episode, but I do agree that Kingdom of the Spiders was incredibly forgettable. So now that, as we're talking about it and you're talking about these scenes, and I'm like, other than that plane scene, I don't really remember a lot of it.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like rating bad movies, I think if something's tedious, then that makes it worse than if it's forgettable. Because forgettable normally means that you were entertained enough at the time, but it's not something that you're really gonna sort of dwell on.
See, that's what it is, right? Like, I still remember, like, now as we're talking about it, I think parts of the film are coming back to me.
Yeah.
Like the whole swing, the kid, that sort of thing. Yeah. Like, all those things, I liked a part of it. But Piranha 3D was just not my cup of tea. No. Obviously, like you said, I'm not the target audience. But, what can I say? Like, that makes more sense that it's at my worst. But yeah, going from there, since now we know what's not on my best, what's your best?
With the best, I mean, there's some films I eliminated like right off the bat because people know already how great they are. So like The Birds and Them, I just took off the list straight away because people know already they are. So it's kind of like there's no point in like giving them more kudos really. So for myself, the best film of the season was Alligator. I just had such a good time with Alligator. It's completely bonkers. And yes, it takes a little bit of time to get going. But when it does, it's just completely nuts. We've got the swimming pool sequence. We've got the wedding sequence. When it bursts up from the street. Even like the Great White Hunter parts in it, which make no sense whatsoever. From like sort of things. I think it's one of those films that like is now only sort of getting its sort of cred, really. I think people only now sort of like realizing how good it is now that it's got a re-release, because before it was sort of one of those films that was on like late night TV. It used to get pretty sort of regular rotation, but at the same time it's like with Robert Forster, I think unfortunately it took into his death for us all to realize just how good he was as well. And you look back at like his scenes that he did in Breaking Bad, or like Jackie Brown, and certainly here again in Alligator, or like even in something like Vigilante, and you just really God, Robert Forster was so good. And he's it was just a really fun time. It's practical effects, and it's a giant alligator under the city streets. What more do you need?
Alligator is a really good choice. I do agree, but mine was all based on what would I watch that I would do a repeat viewing of, and that I had a ton of fun watching, and I had to give it the Deep Rising.
Oh God, I completely forgot, but that's a very good choice though.
Deep Rising is really my cup of tea. Like, I love films like creature features that are like that. It kind of defines what I really enjoy about a creature feature, where there's kind of like these very action-y moments, but at the same time there's also so much of this like gore and craziness, and things really go out of control, and you have these like over-the-top moments, and I just love creature features like that.
Yeah.
And Deep Rising was probably one of the best discoveries that I had during this season. I mean, there was a ton of movies for me to discover because most of them were first time watches for me. But like, I didn't even know Deep Rising existed. So to me, it was even more of a surprise that how did I not know this thing existed? It's like right up my alley, and I just can't help but to give it more love because I really think it should be talked about more.
Couldn't agree more, really. I think it's definitely a really great pick, and it is one of those movies that you sort of like watching. You're like, why are more people not talking about this movie? It just hits all the right beats. Even like goes for the stupid over the top ending. It's got when it's scary, it's scary, and when it's funny, it's really funny, and yeah, it just is what it knows what it needs to be when it needs to be it. So it's great. Just as him, I still haven't got over the fact that we never got a follow up. Even though, even as we said on the show, it was supposed to lead into the director's version of King Kong, which never happened. So never mind. But yeah, those are obviously our best, worst, and hidden gems of this season. Thank you as always for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed our trek through the evolution of the creature feature from the B movies of the 1950s to the sleek thrillers of the 2019. We will be back very soon with our After Hours picks, as well as our Shark Week selection, so you got that to look forward to. In the meantime, though, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to be listening to us. Leave us a review, let us know what you think of the show. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Come say hi to us there, and you can check out our blog, which is moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com, which has got our complete archive of those episodes. We've got some fun writing on there, including our Friday Film Club, where every Friday myself and Kim both pick a film to highlight. Sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's not, but either way, it's a chance for us to talk about more of the movies that we love. But until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we will be back with a new season, a new director, and much more fun along the way. But until then, thank you for listening, and good night.